Hello, and welcome to the penultimate episode of this season's Fractional Futures, where we explore how fractional CMOs can help SMEs and portfolio companies accelerate growth and maximize enterprise value. Today, we're tackling one of the most critical factors in driving revenue growth, and that's the alignment between sales and marketing. Now, for too long, sales and marketing have been seen as separate functions in the organization, often working towards different goals. But when these teams collaborate, businesses will tend to see higher quality leads, increased conversion rates, and stronger revenue performance. In this episode, we'll be exploring how to break down silos, implement revenue operations to align teams and data, and how to use sales insights to refine marketing strategies. Joining me today is Rob Nicholls, a strategic CFO, a non-executive director, and board advisor with over 35 years of global finance experience. Rob specialises in profit maximisation and value creation, and today he'll share his insights on how aligning sales and marketing can drive sustainable revenue growth. Hi, Rob. Welcome to the show.
Very much, Paul. Good to see you again.
So it's a Friday today. You must be getting ready for golf. Where are you teeing off today?
It's a special day for me, Friday. I don't generally work, so this is work. This afternoon is play.
Fantastic. Rob, let's get started. I want to look at how we can break down the silos between sales and marketing. And I think for businesses to scale effectively, the sales and marketing functions, they have to work in sync. They need to align on messaging. They need to align on lead qualification, brand, and customer engagement. But achieving this collaboration is often easier said than done. So, Rob, from your CFO perspective, what are the biggest financial risks of having a disconnected sales and marketing function? And how can businesses ensure that both teams work towards the same revenue goals?
I think this is an age-old problem. We've had this problem for 20, 30 years. It used to be that sales and product operations used to be fighting it out. Now it seems like we have a problem in that people have become siloed between marketing, sales, and finance, less so product now. But we have this ongoing battle, if you will, and that doesn't lead to the outcomes that we want in a business. For me as the CFO and for the CEO, we're looking at revenue growth. It's all about growth, and that's the game we're in. And if we're not aligned between finance, sales, marketing, and the overall operation around value creation, which starts with sales, we're not going to win. So this is not a new problem. I think a lot of the issue we've had really stemmed from the individuals we had in these roles for a number of years. Sales were always about owning the customer and the customer journey and converting those opportunities that came in. Marketing have always hopefully owned the story, the narrative, the engagement with the client, the brand. Brand became a big part of it as well. But the people in those roles and those roles have developed to such an extent now that they're almost antagonistic. And I don't think it'll ever resolve itself firmly. But what we have to do, and what I've seen with businesses that are successful, it's when you bring a third party into that. It's generally not going to be the managing director or the CEO. So it generally becomes the finance team or the finance individual, head of finance, finance control, or the FD or CFO. And that's when it tends to work best. And that's the organizations that I've always seen is when you've got a group, whether it be a regional or a product specific group. And I used to align all of my heads of finance around products or teams, and that they are the arbiter, effectively the referee between sales, operations, and the head of marketing for each of those teams. So I think that's the first thing. You've got to have someone that basically enables the team, effectively, marketing, sales, and finance, to work well. You'll never get it working well if it's just marketing against sales. I've just never seen it work really well there. The other thing that we've had introduced over the last 3 years, and I don't think it's fulfilled its promise that we thought it was going to offer, was RevOps, basically taking the back end functions of each of those operations, sales and marketing, and putting them together in a new operationally focused and taking some of the elements from finance. That really hasn't caught fire. I think there's a lot of people out there doing it, saying they're doing it, but effectively they're not. RevOps clearly was an idea that hasn't captured the imagination, and businesses aren't really going in on RevOps. It's a good idea that you centralize it and do an effective shared service. It's not come to fruit, and I wouldn't encourage businesses to go that direction right now. I think the triumvirate, if you will, with sales, marketing, and finance is the right way to go. And it comes down to the ownership of the data and the information and how it's shared amongst each group. Sales really need to be focused on conversions, and marketing really need to be focused on lead attribution, creating demand, and building the brand. And I think if the teams stick to those areas, and sales totally focus on conversion. Because for me, as the finance person, all I'm really worried about is converting those sales. If I can take conversion rates from 30 to 40% to 50 or 60%, that's a material impact that we can put in play that really marketing hasn't played their part in, other than bringing the lead, nurturing the lead, and putting them in front of a sales team to convert.
Yeah, no, I really like what you said there about the CFO owning that revenue alignment and really working in a triumvirate with sales and marketing. And I think having that independent protagonist between sales and marketing often can add a lot of value. And I think also in the organizations I've worked in and clients I've worked for, sales and marketing alignment is just not an operational challenge. It's a business imperative. And it's something, if you get it right, it can be a driver of competitive advantage. But so many companies do struggle, like you said, getting that alignment. And I think if those two teams, if they're misaligned, forecasting becomes inaccurate, revenue predictability declines, and ultimately business valuation will suffer. If you're coming to look to sell the business, if you can't predict what your revenue is going to be, if you don't have that predictable model, a buyer is going to pay less money for you. And so valuation suffers. And just to pick up on in terms of the KPIs, sales and marketing really should share the same KPIs. Customer journey insights should be centralized. And very few organizations have that central repository of those customer insights. So when your sales team are speaking to clients or customers, they should be capturing data that should go into the CRM. But very rarely is it put into the CRM. Is it rarely put into the CRM accurately? And very rarely is it shared with the marketing team to refine the ICP or get insights where they can refine campaign and messaging. So that there really does need to be that repository of data sharing.
Yeah, I mean, the CRM is a wonderful solution for the organization, but you're absolutely right. I've come across organizations, and I worked with one organization where the CRM data was basically so jealously held by the marketing team that the sales function didn't have access. They literally didn't have access. In fact, the finance person didn't have access to the CRM data. So that was a critical mistake. Alignment is so key here as well. I think one thing we haven't really talked about is the incentive. If you align incentives for sales, perhaps around conversions, and for marketing around other KPIs, but it has to be driven by revenue. And I think incentives are a big creator for opportunities within business. I mean, sales basically they've always been incentivized, and I really do believe that marketing should be incentivized to hit the KPIs that the organization has created. So I'm a big believer in incentivizing marketing. I don't think you should just be salaried. I think you should have bonuses, whether that's monthly or quarterly. I don't believe really in financial incentives that are on an annual basis, because you just have to wait too long for them. I think alignment of incentives is really important too.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. In every organization I've been in, a lot of the tension between sales and marketing comes from the fact that the sales team, if they hit their sales target, they get a big bonus. And the marketing team, they might get a company bonus like all the other employees do, but not to the same degree as what the salespeople do. And there's quite a lot of animosity there between the two. And I'd like to come back to this topic a little bit later on this episode, Rob. You mentioned a moment ago RevOps, and you sort of suggested there that it's probably not a good way to go. But there will be some companies that have chosen to embed RevOps, whether it's a RevOps person or spending a lot of time and effort combining sales and marketing. And it may or may not be working. I just want to get under the skin of that a little bit, Rob, if you don't mind. Obviously, RevOps is there. Some businesses will be looking at it. The theory of it is great, where you can get sales and marketing working really closely together, optimizing revenue, where you have a single framework, operational framework to improve efficiency, enhance the customer experience, and increase profit, predictability. But it is a difficult thing to do. So, Rob, I just want to get under the bonnet of this in terms of, from what you've observed and seen of RevOps, where does it go wrong if RevOps is done badly?
I think where RevOps has worked is with medium to larger size corporates, where there is the scope, the functional scope, and the number of people and instances. That's where it can work well. And we're talking sort of 150, 200 person businesses, perhaps turning over 6, 8 digit revenue numbers. That's where it seems to work well. Where I don't find it works well is where you basically pull together people that may have been a finance analyst, maybe someone who'd been a sales coordinator, someone who'd been a marketing coordinator, and put them into one team and basically try to get them to own the operation, whether that's the CRM system, the HubSpot, and basically they get behind the scenes. That doesn't seem to work very well. I don't know if it's leadership. Oftentimes, RevOps will still report into either a marketing head or a sales head, because it's not generally large enough to report directly into a managing director or even a CFO, perhaps. So I think perhaps it's a leadership issue where it doesn't work right, because you're right. The idea is a sound one in that you centralize back office, you make sure that all the operations that support the sales and client journey are working in alignment. It just doesn't seem to work very well with those smaller organizations of less than sort of 100, 150 persons. And I think it's probably a leadership issue. Now, whether it's the individuals that's been chosen to head up that function are not the right ones, I can't imagine that it's the same issue in every organization. Whether it's just going to take more time to mature, if you will, I don't know what the answer is to it, but it just isn't working yet.
Yeah, and I think where I've seen it work, if marketing is measured by sales accepted leads and revenue impact, that's probably a good place to start. But a lot of marketing teams, as we know, they use the vanity metrics, which tenuously link to revenue, if at all, really. And sales should be accountable for conversion rates and deal quality, not just volume. And I think that's where a lot of companies get it wrong. They rely on sales volume, but look at how good are the deals coming through. What sort of conversion rates are you getting? That's really where the sales team should be rewarded, not just on the number of deals they get across the line necessarily.
I think that's a good point around the KPIs and the metrics, because you're right that sales have their own metrics and KPIs, and marketing as well. And I think if you dilute those metrics and focus on metrics that don't underscore the business objectives at the company or organization level, you're right. You're just gonna have a misalignment of incentives. So it's leaderships, it's metrics, and how do they support the overall mission vision of the organization as a whole. You're right.
Yeah, and I think another metric that can be shared across the organization is customer success generally. And if the organization, if you can retain and increase the lifetime value of your customers, of your clients, the business as a whole succeeds. And that's a responsibility that everyone in the business can and should own. Very few businesses do. One of my clients, I was working with them this week, and when I asked them, do you have any numbers on customer lifetime value? They just looked at me blank. And it's like, if you're not measuring that, that's not a good place to start. So we're trying to re-engineer how they look at their metrics, and how we can track them accurately and what they mean commercially.
It's a really good point. As an investor, I'm a big investor in healthcare and health tech, if you will, and they've got retention rates sort of north of 90%. And in some instances in the US, you'll get retention rates close to 95, 96, 97%. It's the same with hotel occupancy. I was at a hotel recently, they had 50% occupancy, and I just couldn't understand why they weren't using pricing to drive that occupancy up to 70 or 80%. Maybe it suited them for the time of the year. That's understandable. But I think you're right. Those lifetime values, those retention rates, really critical metrics that for some organizations they're just not tracking.
One of the things that I've seen work particularly well, I don't know if you've seen the same, Rob, is the organizations that do this really well, they have what I call a revenue council where you've got the CRO, the CFO, the CMO, and a few others that come together in a collaborative meeting, and they look forensically, analytically at revenue, what's driving revenue, what's not driving revenue, looking at customer lifetime value, looking at customer acquisition costs, sharing insights between sales, marketing, and also revenue insights from the CFO across the team as well. Is that something you've seen or you would encourage?
So it is something I encourage. It's something for one of my clients. I sit on a monthly, effectively, it's a sub board where we've got the sales and marketing lead, myself, and the CEO. And it's really about ownership of the pipeline where we're basically tracking every lead, who owns it, what the likely conversion, the probability of conversion is, when that's going to convert as well. And we're looking at that not on a weekly basis, but that is certainly something we look at on a monthly basis. And it goes into the long term forecast. We run a 9 month rolling forecast. So we're already tracking where January of next year is looking, which builds on where were we January of this year. It's a rolling forecast, and the ownership of that, it's absolutely critical that the finance lead, and to be honest, in most of the organizations that I work in, we don't have both a sales head or a marketing head and a CEO or managing director. Most of them have 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 4 of those heads. Most of the organizations I work in don't generally have a marketing lead, a sales lead, and a finance head as well. It's kind of 2 out of those 3. A lot of the businesses I run are less than £50 million turnover businesses. But it's really about ownership. It's looking at this on a frequent basis. It's not necessarily every week, but clearly at month end, we'll look at it the week before. We'll look at it during the week, the final week of the month. We'll look at it clearly very closely on a quarterly basis as well. Because for me, we have good months, you have bad months, but it's the quarter that counts. Are we making the quarter? Because if for us now, a lot of my businesses are in the fourth quarter. So it's looking ahead now is what is the first quarter of 2025-26 looking like? Who owns it? When is the likely opportunity going to drop? What do we need to get that opportunity in the month? So, if we got a lead that's saying, well, it might be May, I want it in May. I want to bring it in May. What do we need to do to bring it in May? Is it a lunch? Is it a visit? Is it a freebie? Is it an incentive? What do we need to bring that in? And I've got a startup that I work with that's been forecasting a sale was going to convert from August of last year, and here we are in March. They still haven't converted it. So that clearly was not an opportunity that was going to convert in the quarter. We might not even convert it in the next year. So it shouldn't have been as a sort of a 50% likelihood of converting. It should have been a 10%. And those are the ones that are long term, need to be nurtured and focused on for longer term. Maybe pricing is right, maybe the product is right, but it's ownership of that process and sharing the data that works. When it works really well. And I used to be part of a very large organization. We had a very, very well honed process that basically I, as the finance controller in that business, I knew with pretty much certainty when we were going to make the month and the quarter because I'd already got it in my back pocket. I knew those sales were going to convert, and I had a 90 or 95% conviction it was going to convert. And a lot of it comes down to not knowing your customer, not knowing what's important to the customer, what the calendar is for that customer. Do they have the budget? A lot of businesses are struggling right now because they're selling into markets that are hamstrung through budget constraints, whether that's government, education, academic. Um, a lot of budgets are kind of on hold at the moment. And so those sales are just slipping. Sales cycles are taking longer, and the sales are slipping from the first quarter to the second quarter. And then what do we need to get it over the line in the third quarter?
That's interesting, and I think you mentioned in that piece there the importance of data sharing, creating some sort of feedback loop, and I want to explore this concept of a feedback loop now, where you can use sales insights to refine marketing strategies for growth. We both know that sales teams, they have the direct line to customers. They're the ones at the coalface, talking to clients, talking to customers, getting insights. They will hear firsthand what customers care about, what objections they have, and what resonates the most in terms of messaging. So when marketing can tap into those insights, campaigns can become more effective, lead quality improves, sales cycles hopefully should shorten. But too often, this valuable information isn't shared effectively between teams. So, Rob, from your experience, what are the financial benefits of having a well structured feedback loop between sales, marketing, and finance? And how can businesses ensure that those insights are being used to refine and optimize marketing strategies?
So I think if you step back a little bit, I think a lot of the customer journey from what I used to call order to cash, getting cash in the bank from the initial order opportunity, comes down to two things. And I think it's two things that are often missing from an awful lot of businesses and an awful lot of customer journeys. And part of it is because the sales organization or the marketing organization, or in some cases the finance organization, don't understand the importance of. And it's through experience, knowledge, working in different regions, different countries, different businesses, different products or services, whether it's professional service or manufacturing a widget or whatever it may be. And that those two things are the relationship and trust. And I think those are two things that both the marketing and the sales organization really, really need to focus on. And that trust thing comes through brand, it comes through the customer experience, it comes through the customer life cycle, if you will, that I think the marketing team or function really need to own. And the relationship side really does come down to the importance of the sales team earning the trust of the client over time, retaining that client, making sure they really, really understand the pain points and the problems that that customer is looking to solve with your product or service. So it's relatively simple. It's easy to say, but I think we lose sight of it so frequently. And someone like myself, who's a little bit more remote from the day to day, the customer journey or the conversion cycle, I look at this from sort of a 30,000-foot view with the CEO, that I really need to ensure that my marketing team really are building trust over time. And that's brand, that's getting out there, understanding where the market is going, doing real research as to where the product and the service and the market and the client and the customer journey is. And it also comes down to having a sales team that is totally focused on building relationships over time and really understanding people. When someone is unhappy in their role that you're selling into, and understanding and perhaps helping that person, leveraging that opportunity, understanding where people have come from, what's important to them, what issues they're dealing with, both internally and externally, and building that relationship. And I constantly see this in every business I go to, where marketing aren't building trust and sales aren't building a relationship. And if those two things aren't working, finance and the organization will not be collecting revenue, and we won't be generating cash, and we won't be shortening the cycle. And one of the big things I focus on is shortening the cycle from order to cash. So it's taking a journey that might have taken 6 months and trying to get it down to 60 days. I want the opportunity engaged into the funnel effectively, or the flywheel, converted, invoiced, product delivered, service delivered invoice generated, and cash in the bank in the shortest possible cycle. So if marketing and sales can work together to shorten that cycle from 6 to 9 months in the funnel to 30 to 60 to 90 days maximum, you're going to generate a whole lot of good feeling from the finance person and the CEO and the board and investors. And I think one of the problems we've struggled with over the last year or two is sales cycles are expanding. They're going from 60 to 90 days, from 90 days to 180 days. And that's a real problem. You've got to compress the sales cycle, which means you need to focus on building trust in the brand and the product and the service. And on the relationship side, making sure that you can convert quickly and removing roadblocks, removing issues that stop the client from converting, from signing, from sending the order in.
Look, totally echo everything you've said there. And I think certainly the marketing team is often guilty of focusing on top of the funnel lead generation. And they focus so intently on that, they don't always know what truly converts into revenue. And again, it's that trust and that working relationship. If they work really well with the sales team, they'll know how that top of the funnel converts into a prospect becoming a sales qualified lead and then moving through the funnel to a customer or client. If the sales and marketing work together, you can refine messaging based on real customer objections. If sales are holding on to those insights, if they don't tell marketing, oh, our customer said this the other day, that's not a very good thing, is it? Well, actually, if we know what these objections are, we can refine the messaging, or we can refine the value proposition, or we can innovate the product or the service to mitigate those objections. But if you're not sharing that information, then at the end of the day, the company's going to suffer, revenue's going to drop, customers will switch. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and I think the thing we talked about there is, I think the timeline is really, really critical. If I'm the CFO or the CEO of an organization and I want the order in this month, it needs to be in this month, not next month, not May, not August. And you'll generate a whole lot of credibility within an organization if you can bring that client in when you say you're going to bring it in. You remove the roadblocks to the opportunity of the client actually putting the order in place, and you'll generate a whole lot of kudos with me, the finance leader, because I'll get the cash into the business much, much quicker. I can't be waiting months for it. I've got to wait maybe 15, 30, maybe 60 days in some instances, depending on our trade terms. But if you can bring that order in, the other thing is if you can bring it in early in the month as well. I'm much happier as a finance leader if you bring me an order the first week of the month than Thursday of the final week of the month or the quarter. And I've had organizations and salespeople that literally will sandbag until the end of the week or the end of the month. And they know if they've made their quarter or their quota or their KPI, that they'll sandbag till the next quarter. Well, not if I've looked under the tent and seen that, you've got that order in hand. We need to drop it into the funnel now. So you'll get a lot more credibility in the organization if you keep your promises through the relationship, through the trust you've built, and get that sale into the funnel on time.
Good stuff. That's probably a good point to close this show. If you've been listening or watching this episode, I hope you found value from the discussion. In the next and final episode of this season, Rob and I will be discussing how marketing improves valuation multiples at exit, so stay tuned for that one. Rob, thank you again for giving up your time to share your perspectives. I've really enjoyed the show. We could probably talk about sales and marketing alignment all day long, but I know you've got to get onto the golf course. So enjoy the golf later, and I look forward to the next episode.
Thanks, Paul. Cheers.